Hey, YouTubers, Tasman here, bringing you another video or an episode of Learn JavaScript with Foundry VTT. And yes, this is the moment we've been waiting for the last, well, technically we were waiting for it after the last, 3 videos ago. We were waiting for this one to come out. But I wanted to tie everything together better. So we are going to actually have, I believe, 2 videos of async and await, because there's kind of a lot to go over. But async and await was given to kind of simplify even the promises. I mean, promises kind of limited callback hell and the nesting of lots and lots and lots of callbacks, which could get really nasty, and made it so it's a little bit easier to handle. Oh, I forgot, we're in version 10, build 291 still. And then async and await was introduced to kind of even make it a little easier than promises, although technically async and await are using promises. When you, well, we'll talk about that in just a second. So let's go ahead and jump right in. As you see, I already have the thing created, but it doesn't have anything in it. So let's go ahead and begin with putting our little const guy up in here, our one that we've been using. Do that, and we can take this and shift tab once. There we go. And also throw in our little explanation for async and await. And probably make it nice and big so we can read everything. All right, so async and await. This is supposed to be a better way to write promises and helps keep our code simple and clean, which is the ultimate goal of having good code. Is simple and clean, easy to see what's going on. So that's why we have async and await. So basically all you have to do is write the word async before any regular function. So note it doesn't work with arrow functions, nor does it work with function expressions. It has to be a regular function, and it becomes a promise without having to do the, new promise and then all that fun stuff. So definitely makes it a lot nicer there. For async and await, we have 4 keywords we use with it. I don't remember if I've talked about error control and stuff like that with JavaScript. If not, we need to. But we're going to kind of talk about it here. So we did talk about these 3 things within, well, kind of. We did it with the then catch and finally instead of try. So anyway, with error, the word's on the tip of my tongue. I can't think of it. I don't know. Error controlling. We have a special chunk of code. I don't want to say it's a function because you don't do it like a regular function, but we have blocks of code maybe. So inside a try block, we have the code that we want to perform a test on. If it fails, it will either go to the catch or it will continue on. Finally, once again, just like with our promises, finally will always run that chunk of code. But with async, we also have the await. And what the await does is pause the function that is asynced. And we'll go over that and explain that. Hopefully it'll make a lot more sense. So let's go ahead and talk really quick. So in our previous video, we created promises. And because we already did this, I'm just going to copy and paste. So this is basically how we create a promise. We have our function called prom or promise, and basically we're returning a new promise, and we're passing it resolve and reject, which are, I think they're functions. But basically we can attach them as functions as we did in our promise, as to what we're going to do. Now, if the promise is successfully resolved, it will return the resolved. If it fails for whatever reason, it returns rejected, or it marks it rejected, and then we can actually resolve that promise. So we resolve those promises using the .then handler, or the .catch handler for failed ones. With async, it all of a sudden becomes really easy to actually create a promise, because all we have to do is basically it's the exact same thing, except we don't even have this line of code in there. We don't need it. So I'm going to copy and paste this one as well really quick. Do C and a V here. So this is creating a promise using async. Just by sticking async at the beginning of the function declaration makes it so everything within there is a promise. And that is where we would then have our try catch finally block. And the finally is completely optional. I didn't mention that. OPTIONAL. It's just something that will run no matter what happens. So regardless of a failure or a success. So as you can see, with a promise, we return a promise, a new promise, all that fun stuff. With async, we don't have to do any of that. It's implied that this is what we're trying to do. So kind of makes it a little nicer in that sense. So let's go ahead and actually create our PC function as an async function, or as a promise function. I don't think that's really what they're called, but okay, ASYNC. So we have async, FUNCTION, and this will be our PC. We're not passing anything into this, and we will begin something out for sure. All right, and then of course we're going to need to call our PC function. So we'll come down here. We're not actually going to pass anything this time, just to kind of keep it faster, but you could if you wanted. So we're going to do PC, and we're going to call our function just like that. Put some carriage returns after that, maybe a couple there. All right, so inside our async, and this is why I said I don't believe it is considered a function, because we don't actually put, our condition or our parameters or anything with the try, catch, and finally. So we would come into here and we just type try, and we start a block of code just like that. And anything within this block of code is what it's going to try. And if it fails, instead of just stopping the program, it will actually go to the fail mode. So that would be our catch. And catch actually will receive something. It will receive the actual error. So we'll just call it error. And then finally, we have our finally block, which is optional, which is the same thing. So right here, this is the async try catch finally basic layout. This is everything. And I believe, I don't know if you, unnecessary semicolon. I guess you don't need a semicolon, because it doesn't do that when we do like a console log, right? Like here it didn't say unnecessary. So with a try catch finally, you don't need the semicolon. I always try and use semicolons to help me understand where a statement ends. But with JavaScript and not requiring, I kind of wish that the use strict up here would force it to say, hey, yes, use semicolons, or at least there was some kind of command that would say, yes, you have to use semicolons to do a proper thing. Because you will find in code where people sometimes forget it, sometimes they don't, or maybe they add a semicolon that's not necessary, and it kind of makes the code a lot harder to understand what's going on. So let's go ahead and with this example, it's not going to have the timing and stuff except for in one area, because that's where we use our await to tell it to, all right, pause the async function while it finishes this. So this kind of, in a sense, makes it so that it is kind of single threaded. However, anything outside of this function still will run. So it's just pausing and waiting for something that's within this that's dependent upon the next parts are dependent on that finishing. So we're going to kind of simulate that. I'm going to just grab a bunch of my console logs and we'll kind of explain this as we go, what we're doing. So this is basically all our stuff for our creation of our character, right? All the exact same stuff we've had before. However, you'll notice here at gear, we're awaiting a function called getGear. So we obviously need to go create that. So let's go down here, a couple carriage returns here, and we'll do a function called getGear. So you can imagine this is accessing a database or something that is going to take time. However, the code after this is dependent upon this completing successfully. In this case, no, it's not. Once again, this is not efficient code in any shape, way, or form, nor does it make any logical sense as to why you would do it this way. So we're going to do our get gear here, and we're going to do it as a promise for our getting gear. So we're going to return RAT return new promise. We'll go ahead and do that twice, and we're going to do our RESOLVE, REJECT. So whether it fails or succeeds, we want to keep track of that info. Obviously, not a question mark. And then that guy, we'll go ahead and stick our semicolon there, and we'll go ahead and have our thing here. So basically, we're going to do kind of the same thing we did earlier with our promise. We're just going to do a set timeout, and then we're going to resolve a single line of a console log. Really, for no other reason than to explain it. So we're going to do set timeout. Oh, it does have that all built in. That's kind of cool. We want this to be 3,000. And I think I want to do this. We could do it this way, or we could do it as an arrow function. It doesn't matter. We're not going to pass anything in, but let's go ahead and do RESOLVE resolve, and we'll just do a console log. Console.log. And we'll do our gear. Kind of like that. Actually, we don't need that. All right, so here you can see that this is our, well, let me make sure I got everything here. Looks good. Go ahead and semicolon there for good measure, because why not? So as you can see here, we're getting gear, but here we're actually outputting the gear. So all this is really doing is getting the word gear, like we have weapons and spells, and putting it there, right? And we're going to have that take 3 seconds. And I think that's all we need for this guy to do. Now, one thing, once again, to show you that, the program's still running, we're going to have it do its final component down here after PC, which is going to be the armor side of it, which I think is actually the third thing that goes off. So just to explain what's going to happen here then is it's going to do weapons, right? Then it's going to pause on gear for 3 seconds. When this pauses, that is going to simply pause this PC function and say, okay, I'm waiting for something, continue on with the rest of the program. So it will then go ahead and do the armor, and then 2 seconds or whatever, however many this takes. I think it only takes half a second or so, in nanoseconds, milliseconds, or whatever. It will go ahead and do the gear and finally do this chunk of code. Let's go ahead. We didn't actually set up anything with our Houston. We have a problem on this one. We kind of explained that with the other, but we can, I don't think, oh, actually we can still just demo it here. Control C and our finally chunk right here. So what we'll do, instead what we can do, we could say get gear 2, and because that function doesn't exist, we should throw that error. All right, so let's go ahead and run this and see if I have any typos and stuff. Shouldn't, because I copied and pasted a lot of it. All right, so here we go. Let's clear out our previous run, and we'll go ahead and execute. And you'll see it did do the armor, and it paused on the gear, and then this always ran. So what we saw happen is it ran all the code up to weapons, right? If we scroll down, we can see it did all the weapons, and then it does the await on gear, right? And because it's saying, okay, I'm waiting for gear to finish, and that's not going to finish guaranteed for 3 seconds, it goes ahead and says, okay, I'm going to leave this. I'm going to put all this in memory, and I'm going to leave it. And then it goes ahead and outputs armor. And then those 3 seconds elapse, and it goes ahead and does gear. And once it's done gear, it goes ahead and does the actual listing of the gear. And of course, the finally always executes. But if we were to try and have it do something like this, gear 2, and execute, you'll see it got to gear, but then it has an issue because gear doesn't exist. We have the Houston, we have a problem. So then it finishes with the finally block, exits, and runs the armor block. So here we can see we get the weapons. We have the issue with gear instantly, so it fails, and we get, it basically finishes everything else off and then goes here. So the await fails, so it actually doesn't await. So armor is now at the very bottom. Hopefully that makes sense. We're at 18 minutes. This is basically what I wanted to cover with async and await, and hopefully it made sense as far as, you know, the await simply pauses the calling function, which would be this guy up here, until the await is processed successfully. It will hold off on doing this, but it does turn over control back to the main program, which executes that chunk. So we're going to jump a little bit further into the async and await and make it simulate more like what we're used to seeing with our promise and our callback, where it'll do the timing and stuff. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a thumbs up down below. Aside from that, comment, like, subscribe, click the notification bell. Follow me on Twitter. Check out my Discord and my other channels. Don't forget to tell other people about my channel. And yeah, that's it, my friends. Until next time, I'll be seeing you later. Bye.